Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, NBA reporter for Buha's Block, and welcome to another live show. I had said last night I had hoped this was not going to be the case and that I was going to be going live this afternoon, but unfortunately I am. Luka Doncic has been ruled out indefinitely with a grade 2 left hamstring strain. A typical timetable to return from a hamstring strain is 3 to 6 weeks. The NBA playoffs start in 15 days. That is a little bit over 2 weeks from now. The Lakers almost always play on that opening day of the playoffs, that Saturday. So that would put them at playing 15 days from now. So on the conservative side, Luka is slated to miss at least the first 3 games of the first round. And that is in the absolute best case scenario, that he heals on the short side of this timetable and that he's able to ramp up, and that both he and his team and the Lakers clear him off of a second notable hamstring injury this season. And I mean, we've seen it with guys like Jalen Williams, Aaron Gordon, Peyton Watson. You don't really want to play with a hamstring injury and play with it in the sense of like, it's a pretty tricky injury to come back from, and it's nagging and it can be reoccurring. So playing through it is possible, but it's also tricky. Of note, Jeff Stotts, one of the best injury analysts out there, said that in his database, the average timetable to return with this type of injury is 35.7 days, which is a little over 5 weeks. If he's out for 5 weeks, that means he's out the entire first round and potentially even half of the second round, assuming that the Lakers get there, which is you can't assume that at this point. So a devastating blow for the Lakers, a devastating blow for Luka. I want to go through a couple of big questions in terms of what does this mean for Luka, and then what does this mean for the Lakers, and then get into the Q&A and talk through this all with you guys. Going to be going about an hour or so. So I want to start with, what does this mean for Luka? Now, Luka is technically ineligible for NBA awards as things stand. He has played in only 64 out of the Lakers' 77 games, which is 83%. So there is a 62-game rule where if you reach 62 games and you have played at least 85% of your team's games and you get injured at the end of the season, you're still eligible if you've played 62 games. Luka barely misses the mark there. Had he not been suspended for the Washington game, he would have hit the 65-game mark and also would have hit the 85% mark had this somehow happened earlier. But as we saw, the news from Shams, he will be filing a grievance for extraordinary circumstances with the NBA because he missed the 2 games in December for the birth of his daughter in Slovenia. So if that gets approved, there will be an arbitration process that determines his eligibility. And I think it's going to go through because of that, but we'll see. But let's just assume that it happens. At that point, you would take off those 2 games from the ledger, and Luka would have played in 64 of 75 eligible games. And that would mean he hits that 85.3% mark, which is the minimum for the 62-game rule. And at that point, Luka would be eligible for end-of-season awards. Now, that said, we just had the latest iteration of the MVP straw poll come out. Luka was a distant 4th, still behind Shea, Wemby, and Jokic. He did not get any first-place votes. He only got 6 second-place votes. So based on that, which I would say somewhere between like 65 to 80% of the voters participating in that are actual voters, and it is a pretty reflective process, reflecting what the voting process will be in a couple weeks. That to me, I mean, he's not going to win MVP. I don't think he's going to finish in the top 2. I don't even think he's going to finish in the top 3, but 3 seems to be his ceiling, and it'll be between 3 and 4. So that I don't think MVP is realistic at this point, but he still has an obvious first team All-NBA case, and to continue his streak of making, I believe it's 6 straight first team All-NBAs. So this would be 7 straight to start his career after his rookie year. So that, of course, is worth fighting for. And I think he will get cleared and he will make first team All-NBA. But again, Luka is now projected to be out at least midway through the first round. And again, that's the most optimistic projection here. This is with everything going correctly and on like the shortest possible timetable. And if you're the Lakers, like you have to weigh the pros and cons here of like, yes, it's the playoffs. This is what you've been building toward all season. But at the same time, the worst case scenario is you force him back and then he just full on like seriously tears his hamstring. And this is a multi-month, if not longer, injury. And now like the start of next season is in jeopardy. So Lakers got to be careful here with how they handle the situation. Luka has to be careful with how he handles it in terms of trying to push to come back sooner than or in the shortest possible timetable. So I think realistically, this likely means he's out for the first round, barring a miracle. And I think there is a pathway for LA to win in the first round, but it's unlikely. They will be underdogs in any potential first round series. It's still looking like Minnesota or Houston. And really, I mean, it is going to be Minnesota or Houston, but just a really tough blow for Luka based on he just won his second player of the month, was playing his best basketball of the season. The Lakers were coming together at the right time, and this is just a really tough blow for them. As for what this means for LA, so I think anything, Lakers got 5 games left in the regular season. I think anything between 2-3 and 4-1 to close the season is possible. I think they're going to beat Dallas and Utah, who are both tanking and will rest their guys down the stretch just to lose. So even if the Lakers are somehow down like 10 points, like Utah's been feisty lately. They've been playing some, they played Denver in a close game. Like they've had some games against better teams where they've been like leading or right there in like late third quarter, and then they will just rest their guys in the fourth quarter. So Lakers, I think, have 2 guaranteed wins. But I think 4-1 is like the absolute best case scenario. The one loss is like they're not going to beat OKC, especially with OKC, I think in that game having a chance to ice the 1 seed. And we just saw a matchup between these 2 teams. OKC is going to win that game. Then I think the Phoenix and Golden State games can go either way. Technically, I would say LA's got a real shot to beat Golden State. I would put them as underdogs against Phoenix. But Phoenix also doesn't have much to play for. So maybe they're not, maybe they're being conservative with some of their guys, resting them for the play-in. We'll see. But I think anywhere between 2-3 and 4-1 is possible. If they go 4-1, they lock up the 3 seed. If they go 2-3, they're likely going to drop to 4. If they go 3-2, it depends what happens with Denver. But if Denver wins out, because right now Denver is a game back in the loss column. If Denver goes 5-0, they go to 54-28. Lakers would have to, the Lakers would have to go 4-1. So there is to tie them. And then at that point, Lakers have the tiebreaker. But if Lakers go 3-2, they win 53. Denver at that, I guess at that point, 3-2, Denver has to go undefeated and win out, which is possible if they beat San Antonio tomorrow. That's like the biggest remaining game of the season from the Lakers perspective of like a non-Lakers game. You could also say Houston, Minnesota, second to last game is the biggest one too. Like those are the 2 biggest ones because that'll determine if Denver has a shot to win out and then also what happens with Houston, Minnesota. But Lakers are still in a strong position. I think the most likely outcome as of right now is still number 3, but it gets dicey. Like if they somehow lost to Dallas on Sunday, then anything is possible in terms of them dropping to number 4. As I said last night, Minnesota already has 30 losses. So assuming the Lakers get the 2 automatic wins, the Lakers can't drop to 6. Like they technically can drop to 6 if they go 0-5, but I think they're going to get at least 2 wins, which would keep them above Minnesota. If Minnesota beats Houston, Houston would have 30 losses at that point, and Lakers then can't drop below them. So I think the Lakers are likely going to be between the 3 and the 4. Really depends how they close out the season, though. If they only go 2 and 3, there's a decent chance they drop to 4. If they go 3 and 2, Denver would have to win out at that point to steal the 3 seed. But regardless, the Lakers are going to be underdogs going into the first round now without Luka. I don't think that is a controversial statement. I thought they were heavy favorites against Houston and slight favorites against Minnesota, but that dramatically shifts without Luka. So looking at some of the lineup data post All-Star break and in March, post All-Star break, the Lakers have been outscored by 7.1 points per 100 possessions without Luka. So they've been functionally a lottery level team without Luka Doncic post All-Star break. With him on the floor, they've been outscoring teams by 9.3 points per 100 possessions. That's a 16.4 points per 100 possession swing there, which is close to the season-long mark for like a Wemby or even better than Jokic's season-long mark. So like to put it in perspective, just like the Spurs have been much worse without Wemby on the floor. Denver dies when Jokic is off the floor. That's how the Lakers have been functioning post All-Star break with Luka. So the non-Luka minutes have been pretty rough lately for LA, and they're going to have nothing but non-Luka minutes moving forward. And just isolating from March, because that was the Lakers' best stretch of the season, if we take out some of the February noise and even last night against OKC, Lakers with Luka off the floor, minus 2.6. Lakers with Luka on the floor, plus 13.1. So that's maybe a little bit closer to reality right now in terms of Lakers being really good with Luka on and like still like a slight minus with him off. But minus 2.6 in that rating, like that's obviously not good. And it does cast some concern and doubt as to LA's ability to survive without him in a playoff series. So what I think this means for the Lakers and what's going to have to happen is LeBron and Austin are now going to be the number 1 and number 2 options in some order. I think it does depend on the matchup, as I've talked about, with one of those two being the number 2 versus one of those two being the number 3. I think it is matchup dependent. To me, Minnesota is more of an Austin matchup and Houston is more of a LeBron matchup. Now, to be clear, either way, I think both guys need to be at an all-star level, if not an all-NBA level, for the Lakers to win. So we could get into the semantics of who has the ball more, who's taking more shots. And again, I think Minnesota, Austin has played really well against them in the regular season. And I think LeBron has a less of an advantage against their front court of Julius Randle, Rudy Gobert, Naz Reid. They've got a ton of size, a ton of rim protection, interior defense, rebounding, etc. So I don't think you can go to the LeBron bully ball as much. And his jumper obviously has not been the same as it was last season. So doesn't mean you don't like LeBron is still going to be, I think, above 25% usage percentage. I think both of these guys will, and maybe even closer to 30%. But I think the entry point based on his success, cooking Jaden McDaniels, cooking Ant, cooking Dante DiVincenzo this year, I think Austin is more of the entry point. Then the flip side is against Houston, as we saw, LeBron was able to play bully ball against them. And while they do have an army of wings and perimeter defenders, none of them have the strength to necessarily match up with LeBron. So I think that's more of a LeBron series with transition, rolling, and finishing out of the post. But again, to be clear, I know we are always litigating the who's number 2, who's number 3, who should be number 2, who should be number 3. I think Austin has a slight advantage in the Minnesota series and LeBron has a slight advantage in the Houston series. But both these dudes need to be at like I think Austin's floor needs to be 24, 25 points, 5-6 rebounds, and 7-8 assists. I think LeBron needs to be somewhere in the mid-20s, 7-8 rebounds, 7-8 assists. Like they need the best version of Austin that we saw earlier in the season and we saw right before the road trip. And we need the version of LeBron that we had seen back in like January, February, before Austin returned. If you get those two versions, I think the Lakers at least have a puncher's chance. But this entire thing is predicated on both of those guys playing at like high level all-star, if not all NBA levels. And if they don't do that, the Lakers just don't have a chance at all because they're going to be at a serious talent deficit against both teams because the Lakers are a top heavy roster and you take out the best player and one of the big three that just now everybody slots up an additional role or an additional spot in the pecking order. And it's not really a fair fight. Beyond those two, the Lakers are going to need a ton from Marcus Smart, DeAndre Ayton, Rui Hachimura, Jake LaRavia, Jackson Hayes, and Luke Kennard. Every one of those guys needs to step up to some degree, like 5 to 10%, 10 to 15%, whatever they're doing, they need to do it better on both ends of the floor. And like that, of course, just comes with the playoffs, but everybody needs to step up and do a little bit more. And this is not the time for shooting slumps or lazy defense or not being ready for the moment. Of course, the shooting is out of players' control, but like this is when the Lakers need some regression to the mean in a positive sense, or even kind of outperforming some of their metrics. I think JJ is going to need to insert Vando back into the rotation full time and lean more on the defense of the Banshees. Marcus, Jake, Vando, Jackson, they need to get back to earlier in the season when they were, and even recently, parts of March when they've been creating a lot of turnovers, getting out in transition. I think March ultimately was more of an offensive month in general than a defensive month, although the defense was top 10. But I think like the offense really helped out the defense to some degree. This is going to have to be the opposite, where I think the defense is going to have to help out the offense. And of course, there's a symbiotic relationship between both sides of the ball. So when you're playing good defense, it helps your offense. When you're playing good offense, it can help your defense. But I think losing Luka is such a blow to the offense. It's also a blow to the defense with the off-ball defense, the playmaking, the steals, the deflections, etc. And he had an awesome March defensively, nominated for Defensive Player of the Month in the West. But more so, it's going to be the usage, the volume. There's like a lot that the Lakers are going to have to replace. And we saw some positives in that Washington game. At the same time, it was Washington, and I don't want to extrapolate that out and be like, well, they beat Washington by 20, so they can all of a sudden beat Houston or Minnesota without Luka. Like, I don't think that would be an accurate statement. So everybody needs to collectively step up. And then final thing, before I get into my current predictions as things stand, I think Jake should be the fifth starter over Rui and Luke. I know there's an argument, and there's like the plain logic of just, well, Luka provides a certain amount of offense, so we need to replace that with offense. But I do have concerns of around the DA, LeBron, Rui trio defensively. I think in a playoff setting, you are going to be getting the best version of each of those guys theoretically in terms of being locked in and focused and aware. I still think collectively they are below average athletically and below average foot speed wise. And I would like to, particularly, I haven't loved the LeBron Rui minutes this year compared to last year or even the year before. So I would like to limit that. I would rather lean into Jake. And yes, you're going to be rolling the dice offensively with the shooting, but you at least have a certain floor defensively that I think Jake coming in, and Jake and Marcus being the two primary guys, that allows LeBron and Austin to defend the two worst 1 through 4 players and be more help guys. So for example, if you're playing Minnesota, you can go Marcus on Ant, Austin on DiVincenzo, LeBron at that point assuming McDaniels is back, he has to guard either McDaniels or Randall, and then you put Jake on the other one. Maybe you put Jake on Randall. LeBron helps off McDaniels to a degree, although he's been shooting the ball really well this season. And then DA's on Gobert. And then if it's Houston, it's DA on Şengün, LeBron. There's no great matchup there. I guess you go Marcus on KD, Austin on Amen Thompson. They just put Reed Shepherd actually in. So Austin on Reed Shepherd. You could have maybe LeBron help off Amen Thompson and Jake on Jabari Smith. Not great, but it's just the matchups that the Lakers have right now. But I do not think it. I mean, I would rank it actually like Jake, Luke, Rui in terms of who I would put in. But Luke, I just think the defense that's more of an offensive play, and just like his gravity kind of moving in there. But I think Rui will be given a shot, and maybe it ends up being Rui. But based on JJ going to Jake recently with a couple of the absences, including when Luka was out against Washington, I think it is going to be Jake for the time being. And then as things stand, my current predictions, if the Lakers play a first round series without Luka Doncic, I would pick the Wolves in 5 over the Lakers. I think it would be a repeat of last year. Lakers would get one of the games in LA, game 3 or game 4, extend it to 5, but I think they would lose decisively. If it's Houston, I would pick Houston in 6 over LA. I think LA gets a couple games, but Houston still wins the series. Now, if Luka is somehow able to return game 3 or game 4 in the first round, which is, again, like the best case scenario, I still think Minnesota wins the series. I think Minnesota would win in 6 at that point, just because I would not be surprised if it's 2-1 or 3-0 before Luka returns. But if he's able to return midway through a Houston series, I would actually pick LA to win that in 7. I think the Lakers would just be more competitive without Luka, and I think LA would be able to then extend that series and ultimately win it in 7. But it's hard not to see, like, I mean, as of right now, I think the assumption should be he's not going to play in the first round. And if he's not playing in the first round, I have a hard time seeing the Lakers winning a series against teams of this caliber. Like, I know it's been easy to rag on the Rockets, but they've been playing much better basketball. And Luka was a big part of LA's success in both of the Rockets wins. Like, that's been the thing here is the Lakers have played Minnesota and Houston 6 times this season. They're 5-1. But Luka has played in all 5. He's played in 4 of the 5 wins. One of the wins was against Minnesota in Minnesota. No Luka, no Ant. That was the Austin game, winner game. And then the loss was the Christmas loss to Houston. But I just think, like, looking at last night's performance, and Luka did not have a good game, but seeing Austin and Luka both struggle with the ball pressure and just not really being able, like, I thought Austin played progressively better throughout the first half and ended up being the leading scorer, but like he obviously had the terrible first few minutes of the game. Luka, partly I think because of the hamstring, just was more of a jump shooter and taking a bunch of contested threes. No one else was really able to step up. Like LeBron, I think had success against them attacking the small ball stuff, but like putting the big 3 to the side, and there was no Marcus, so that's a fair counter that like Marcus will help with this, but no one else really looked comfortable offensively. No one else was really able to step up and do certain things. And yes, that's OKC. It's a different breed of defense, but I do think in the pressure cooker of a playoff situation, it's hard to see LA surviving without Luka. And I just don't think they have enough offensive shot creation and ball handling unless Austin and LeBron both just go insane. And that's possible. We've seen, like, LeBron is a playoff riser. I'm never going to doubt LeBron in the playoffs. I think every season in LA, he's been just as good, if not better, in the playoffs as he was in the regular season. And then Austin, I am cautiously optimistic that he is going to be better in this postseason, especially if he's forced into a number 1 or number 2 role. But I mean, it's crazy how quickly things change. 24 hours ago, there was optimism about, can the Lakers have a competitive game with OKC and really show that they're maybe not on OKC's level, but it's at least like a competitive situation. They get ran off the floor in that. It is so decisive that it's hard to walk away from that matchup with any optimism. And then on top of that, Luka gets hurt. And now we were talking about at the time, like, can the Lakers make the second round and have a competitive series with San Antonio? Now it's like, can they even get out of the first round? Does Luka even play in the first round? And if he's able to return, like, I think it's foolish to be like, well, if Luka returns, he's at 100%. Like that's not how this works. You need some time to, I mean, there are exceptions and maybe Luka can be the exception. Like, I think Kevin Durant has a pretty good track record of returning. Jason Tatum looked pretty good after returning, but it's more often than not, the players at 80%, 85%, 90%. And I think the Lakers hitting their ceiling, especially against San Antonio, if they were to somehow advance and play San Antonio in round 2 or OKC in round 2, they need like best in the world, 100% MVP Luka. And it's just hard to see that player being back anytime soon, or especially like right after he returns. So just a really tough blow for the Lakers that potentially spells the end of their season, as grim as that is to say, and as unfortunate as it is to say. And like after this awesome March where they rose from the 6 seed to the 3 seed, to have it all end this way, it just it feels very snake bitten, and it's just really unfortunate. But with all that said, let's get into the Q&A here. Jeffrey J. Cal, thank you for the super chat. Not sure why the training staff let him play in the third after he already strained it and they were down by 30. Why not be cautious? I agree with this sentiment. I think the bigger picture for me has been the minutes. And if you look at, it's not only Luka, it's also Austin. But if you look at the minutes that these guys have been playing, I believe Luka was the minutes leader in March, which is saying a lot there. But looking at the game logs here, and I will, here, I'll share the screen. If we go through the game logs on Basketball Reference, starting in, I mean, you could say starting in late February. I mean, really starting post All-Star break, he goes 38 minutes, 33, 38, 39, 29 because they blow out Golden State, 29 because they blow out Sacramento. But then from there, 38, 40, 32, 38, 35, 37, 43, Denver game onto OT, okay. 40 in Houston, 38 in Houston, 38 in Miami, second out of a back-to-back, 38 in Orlando, 39 in Detroit, 38 in Indiana. That entire 6-game road trip where he averages the 40-plus, first player since Michael Jordan to do that 40 years ago on a 6-game road trip. He did not play under 38 minutes on that entire road trip. And he was coming off of a Denver game where he just played 43 minutes. Like, that is not a sustainable workload. Then you get to Cleveland game. They blew them out. He was able to play 34 against OKC. He plays 26 because he exits due to injury. But that's just, that's too much. I don't really know how else to say that. I was trying to say that. I know some people push back on me about the league being soft, or back in the 90s, guys played a certain amount. But it's like, this was kind of coming. And maybe not to this extent, but like, I was a little worried that Luka or Austin was going to get banged up or suffer something that would, I was thinking more like short term of maybe it cost them the 3 seed and they dropped to 4. But I mean, now this might cost the Lakers their season. So I actually have more of an issue going back over the past month with the workload and the minutes for Luka from the coaching staff. But to your point, I think people have been on JJ and the coaching staff and blaming them. I think it's more on the training staff and the medical staff of, again, like I'm sure they ran some tests, and I don't think these things, I don't think the Lakers are like, oh, we're going to come back against OKC down 30. Let's throw Luka back in. And they're like forcing it. I think he was legitimately cleared, but based on how cautious, like this has been a pretty cautious medical staff all season. And a lot of nicks and knacks they have not allowed guys to play through. And if there was ever a time to not let a guy play through that, it was now. It was down 30 in OKC. Luka's dealing with a hamstring injury that he was dealing with a couple months ago and has been bothering him for a couple months. Like, why clear him to go back in? I just do not understand that. I would love more clarity on that. But I mean, yeah, it's very unfortunate for the Lakers that this is how that played out. Next one from Rama Aviation. I swear, no matter what happens, whatever the roster is, it feels like every single year it's LeBron or bust, no matter the circumstances. Every year is sad face. It really does. And like, I can say now, so I started covering the team full time after the championship. So I joined 2020, 2021. And that season is snake bitten. You have AD go down in December. You have LeBron go down. Forget if it was like February or March, maybe February, with the Solomon Hill injury. And then they come back. They start to have momentum. They close the season well. They're up 2-1 in the series. AD goes down. 2021-22 was an absolute disaster with the Russ trade. And that roster, I've talked about it recently, half that roster was out of the NBA by the following summer. Just a disaster class in roster building and decision-making. And that roster, throw it out. 2022-23, they have part of that roster to start the season, and they were the 13th seed before the trade deadline. They make the moves at the deadline. They get Rui, they get Vando, they get D'Lo. Austin is ascending. LeBron and AD are ramping up. LeBron does suffer, remember, the foot stuff late in the season, and I think was not fully himself in that playoff run. And that was like another thing where he, like, had LeBron been a little bit healthier, I think that Lakers have a more competitive series with Denver. Now, I think Denver was better and Denver was going to win the series, but maybe they get a game or two. It's a more competitive showing. 2024, similar thing. I believe LeBron suffered another, it was the groin, or maybe I'm mixing up 2023 and 2024, but I'm pretty sure 2023 was the foot, 2024 was the groin. And like, he's been managing this foot injury for years now, dating back to 2023. And he's had different feet injuries over that span. But another situation where they're not as healthy. Again, I think Denver wins the series. Denver was just better than them. They had their number in crunch time. But that was another series where he was not quite himself. Last year, Lakers, they lose some momentum with LeBron getting hurt in March, but they start to find themselves again going into the playoffs. But then you have the Luka situation in game 3, which I think if Luka is at full strength with the version of LeBron we got in that game, the Lakers probably win that game. I don't know if they win the series. I'm not going to go that far. But they had game 3 and game 4. They lose both those games in the clutch. That was the series, right? It was 1-1 going back to Minnesota. Game 3, pivotal game. Luka gets food poisoning or whatever happened, and then they lose the game. So, yeah, it just feels like a lot. Like, whenever there's been optimism or things trending in the right direction for the Lakers, the last really like post-title, something has always gone wrong at like the worst possible time. And sometimes it's been a smaller thing, like Luka being sick for one game in the playoffs and that kind of swinging the series a little bit. Or it's been bigger things with like the LeBron injuries, the AD injuries. And it's just been unfortunate. I don't like, they've had some just terrible luck these last few years. And part of it is, you are relying on, in LeBron's case, one of the oldest superstar we've ever seen. And just like naturally you're in your late 30s or early 40s, you're going to be a little bit more injury prone. And then with AD, he's had his extensive injury history. So some of that was predictable to a degree, but you can't predict when an injury is going to happen. And that is just like, yeah, they've just had some really crummy luck over the last few years. And they've cycled through multiple training staffs, medical staffs, and has it really made a difference? So yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate. Sarah Talks Ball, thank you for the super chat. If he's ineligible from that soft suspension, I swear to God. I mean, yeah, it might be because of that. I think they're gonna make the exception here. I don't think he'll win MVP. I think he'll finish 3rd or 4th, more likely 4th, but I think he'll be on first team All-NBA and continue his historic start with the first team All-NBA streak. Ali Latif, thank you for the super chat. Would you rather fall to 6 seed to get higher pick? No, because I did not mention one team in particular, the Denver Nuggets, because I don't see a realistic scenario in which the Lakers play the Nuggets. If the Lakers drop to 6, that means the Nuggets are almost certainly going to be the 3 seed. And if the Lakers play the Nuggets, I picked Wolves in 5 over LA without Luka. I mean, I think it's similar. I think it could even be a sweep without Luka. So I think it's a 4 or 5 game series. So I think the Lakers have, staying in the 3 or the 4, they have home court, and I think they could beat Minnesota or Houston, however slim the chance, without Luka. Now, I think it's far more likely against Houston than Minnesota, and to be clear, I'm not predicting it. I'm actually predicting the Lakers to lose in 3 of the 4 scenarios of either no Luka for both series or Luka coming back halfway through each series. But if it's Denver, I think Denver's a different beast. I think they're at a different level than Minnesota and Houston. So I hear the point about the higher pick, and you're kind of just saying like, we're screwed anyway. Like, let's just get the better pick. But it's going to be really hard to tank all the way down into the 6 seed. If the Timberwolves, so the Lakers at most can lose 32 games if they lost the next 5. It's going to be tough to out tank Dallas and Utah though, unless you just straight up rest LeBron and Austin. And Minnesota might not lose 2 more games, and Houston might not lose 3 more games. So at that point, it's like, I mean, I guess that's maybe speaking to LA potentially getting there, but like they could, like if Minnesota or Houston do lose 2 or 3 more games. So Minnesota, they're playing Philly right now. Let's see what this score is. But then they got Charlotte, Indiana, Orlando, Houston, New Orleans. They should go at least 3-3, if not 4-2. If they go 3-3, Lakers could drop below them. It's really early in that Philly game right now. And then Houston has got Utah, Golden State, Phoenix, Philly, Minnesota, Memphis. I mean, they should probably go 4-2 at least as well. So I guess it's possible if you punt all 5 games. I do not think the Lakers are going to punt all 5 games. And even if they try to punt the Dallas and Utah games, I think they're going to win both of those. So I think realistically, there's a scenario if Houston wins out, they could drop to 5, and that would be including them beating Minnesota, Houston beating Minnesota. But I think realistically, they're going to be 3 or 4, and it just depends on, I think the Golden State game to me is probably the swing game. I think they almost certainly beat Dallas and Utah. I think they almost certainly lose to OKC, and I think they likely lose to Phoenix. And then Golden State's a swing game of, if you go 2-3, you're probably dropping to 4. If you go 3-2, Denver needs to win out for you to drop to 4. True Setter, appreciate the super chat. Season is over. Thanks for the coverage, Buha. I appreciate the super chat, and I appreciate the kind words. I understand the sentiment, and I think if we are simulating, if we're simulating 1,000 simulations of how the rest of the season is about to go, I would agree that 900 of them or so are the season is over, whether that's losing in round 1 or somehow escaping through the skin of their teeth and then getting curb stomped in round 2 by San Antonio or OKC. But let's see, right? Let's see how the final 5 games go. Let's see let's see how the OKC matchup goes on Tuesday. Maybe they have some spirited performance where they find something and they give us some optimism, at least going into round 1. But I mean, realistically, I don't think this team as constructed was going to win a championship. I think it was treated largely like a gap year from the front office and ownership. They did the bare minimum with their spending over the summer, and they did invest a 2nd-round pick to upgrade Gabe Vincent into Luke Kennard, but that was a very low-stakes investment. So the front office and organization have been telegraphing like they did not fully believe in this team. They did not go all in on this season. And to the team's credit, they have made them look a bit foolish with that and have shown like, hey, if you had done an Andrew Wiggins trade over the summer, or you had done something bigger at the trade deadline, we would be in an even stronger position right now and have more of a chance to make some noise in the playoffs. But as things stand, I think this almost certainly eliminates any chance in round 2 and does make them a heavy underdog in round 1. So to your point of season being over, like, I mean, they're going to make the playoffs. They're going to have a 1st-round series. But yeah, I mean, it certainly a tough pill to swallow right now. The more we know, 77. Thank you for the super chat. We really have Braun, a now 3rd option, and AR who plays scared and crappy against Houston, OKC, and San Antonio type defense. Man, it's over. No $240 million for Austin Reeves. I think to the last point here, one of the interesting things with this whole situation is I've been making this point since the offseason that this entire season was going to be an audition process for who fit with Luka, and to a lesser degree Austin, because I do believe the Lakers are going to retain Austin. But even with Austin, how he fit with Luka and what the ceiling of this group could be with them all together. Now that's kind of taken away, unfortunately, and it is going to have to be figuring out like how much you weigh of the regular season results and how much, like how you view the playoff results in the context of that, right? Because if Luka does miss the entire, like, let's just say most likely scenario here, Luka misses the first round, Lakers lose in the first round. How do you, I'm not even getting into Austin yet. I will get into Austin in a second, but like, how do you parse through the results of each of the core players, like with Luka in the regular season versus how they performed in the playoffs? Because like, yes, you can blanket it and just be like, regardless of if Luka's there, I'm going to judge these guys on how they perform in the playoffs. Like, I think that is a fair sentiment to a degree, but it's also like, if you don't have Luka, it's not really a real battle here. It is a very depleted Lakers team that like, I think this is going to affect DA and Jackson and the quality of looks they get. I think this is going to affect Luke and Rui and the quality of looks they get. I think it could, to your point, potentially affect LeBron and AR and their usage and their efficiency and just kind of putting them in spots that they might not be fully ready. Like LeBron, I've less of a concern with. I think it's really just like where he's at physically, and he's still been dealing with the foot stuff and the back stuff. And can he just stay healthy at 41, dealing with several injuries throughout a playoff series? And then Austin, how does he fare against Minnesota or Houston in round one? But for the Austin part of the conversation, this is a big opportunity for Austin. If Austin can be the version of him we saw in November and December, pre-injury in December, and be, at the time, people were talking about him as an all-NBA third-team guard. If he can play like that and play like he did against Minnesota in Minnesota early in the season, and like the Sacramento game, and just the Toronto game where Rui hits the game winner, he had 44 in that game. If you can get that version of Austin, and it doesn't mean you're going to win the series, but at least it's more competitive. Like if the Lakers lose in 6 to Minnesota or Houston, no Luka, and Austin balls out, I think that does show you something with Austin that, like, yes, those are not necessarily replicable circumstances in terms of he's more the number one or maybe 1B in a series. That is not how he's going to be with Luka. Like Luka's going to be the clear number one. Austin at best will be the clear number 2. But it is something to build off of and something to take of like, okay, with no Luka, he stepped up and he showed a certain level, and you can at least have some more confidence. If he struggles without Luka as the number 1 or number 2, that's concerning. But then there's also the element of like, well, but he doesn't have Luka as like the first line of offensive attack, and then he's operating on the weak side, or he's complementing that. So it does get a little difficult to judge. And then the Lakers we're just gonna have to make some gut calls here as to how much they weigh of the regular season performance, because with Austin, he's had some big games against some good defenses. He's also had some stinkers against good defenses. And to your point about the Houstons, the OKCs, the San Antonios, the Phoenixes, he's had some inefficient performances and high turnover games. And then you could go down the roster though, and it's like DA or Rui, or pick your player. They have had some stinkers against some good teams too. So like I don't know how you parse through that all and determine like what is real and what isn't. It's not a job I envy for the front office to have to go through that, but it is like, this is an opportunity for someone to step up. If DA steps up and has like a 20-12 series, or Austin steps up and has like a 29-6-8 series, or Rui or Luke or Jackson or whoever, there is now like usage to go around, and there is an opportunity for someone to step up and provide a boost in a real way. Will that happen, and who will it be? I can't tell you. I mean, I think Austin and LeBron naturally will be the two that benefit the most from usage, but Rui will get more usage, Luke, etc. Like I think Luke becomes more important now as almost like a backup point guard, because he's one of the few guys on the team that can actually bring the ball up the floor against pressure and get the Lakers into offense. Marcus becomes a lot more valuable. Marcus also is probably going to take a lot more shots, which could be a good thing or a bad thing. So we'll see. But yeah, I mean, Austin has a chance to earn some money this postseason, but he certainly has a chance to lose some money this postseason. Champy, thank you for the super chat. Yes, they can survive better without Tubby. Look, we'll see how I'm not going to engage with the second part of this comment, but we'll see. One thing I actually wanted to look at was some of the lineup data without Luka on the season against Minnesota and Houston. So I will do that maybe in a later question. Champy follows up. LA will play more as a team and better defensively. I mean, I think it's undeniable that the offense functions differently because Luka is a heliocentric player who is one of the highest usage players in the league, and like there is a Luka style of offense compared to a non-Luka style of offense with this group, right? So I think there will naturally be more usage and more engagement for everybody, which can be a positive to a degree. But I also think in a playoff setting, it often comes down to who has the best player in the series, who has the best player in a given game. And I think right now, the Lakers will be underdogs in that, especially if they're playing Minnesota. It's like, I think Ant is clearly the best player in that series. And can LeBron or Austin match him in a game? Yes. Can they match him 4 times? I'm skeptical of that. Houston, Lakers have had some success against KD recently. So, but then they also have Şengün. And also Luka really tests your weakest defenders because of the ability to target on the perimeter. And especially in that Houston matchup, bringing Şengün up into the action and picking on him in the pick and roll. You can do that to a degree with Austin. It's just Austin's not hitting the 30-foot bombs in Şengün's face and attacking him the same way that Luka can. He attacks him differently. Better defensively, that has not been, that does not bear out with the post All-Star break data. Earlier in the season, yes. More recently, no. I mean, I just had it pulled up here. This is in the month of March. The Lakers were almost 5 points per 100 possessions better with Luka on defensively than Luka off. If we change that to post All-Star break, Lakers are 3 points per 100 possessions better with Luka on than off defensively. So they are a worse defense with Luka off the floor. Then next one from Samir. Thank you for the super chat. How do you think Luka responds to this? Does he continue to commit himself to the conditioning and fitness, or does he revert to bad habits? Also, how does this injury impact the Lakers offseason? I think Luka will respond well to it. Like, he has maintained his fitness for, I wouldn't even say like the most part. Like, I think he has maintained his fitness. I think maybe there was a stretch there earlier in the season, like when he went away to Slovenia and had the break. And then also when he was dealing with the hamstring stuff, I think he didn't look like the same player physically, but for the most part, he has maintained his off-season regiment and just structure and stature. So I'm not, if he like gained like 20 pounds during the season or something like that, I think we'd be having a different conversation right now. But I don't, like, that has not been the case. He's actually continued to lose weight during the course of the season. So I think Luka, I don't know what he's going to do. I'm just projecting here, but I think based on the season he just had, which you could argue is the second best season of his career, or even the best, depending on how you view it in comparison with 2023-24, just from an individual perspective and a regular season perspective. Obviously, the playoff results now are in jeopardy. I think this season should be proof of concept for Luka of, when I am in my best shape or as close to my best shape as possible, I am in that conversation for best player in the world. I do average 34, 8, and 8 on efficient shooting splits. I'm that dude. So I would hope that this would just be further confirmation that what he did last summer and the way that he approached the offseason is the right way for him to approach the rest of his career. And then in terms of how this injury impacts the Lakers offseason, one way I hope it does not impact the Lakers offseason is them somehow being like, well, we got injured and we had the 16-2 stretch, and we did lose the OKC. That was a blowout. That wasn't, that kind of spiraled, but let's run it back or let's add like one player. That would be my fear. I don't think that's going to happen. I think with Mark Walter and some new leadership and management in the building, in overseeing things, they are going to take a pragmatic and sober approach to the offseason and really hammer in on like, we need to get better. We need better depth. We need better athleticism. We need better defense. We need better shooting. We just need a deeper rotation, better two-way rotation. And we need 1 to 2 new starters, multiple new bench players, and a better back end of the roster. Like I think there are 3 segments of additions that the Lakers need to the team right now. And I think that's going to be more the way they trend than just running it back. Now, I could be wrong because they've ran it back multiple off seasons in a row. They tend to just run it back in the off season and then try to make in-season moves. I hope I'm wrong because I think if they run it back, they could be a 50-win team again. They could even be better next season, and maybe they are in that mid to high 50s, but I do not think they will be on the same level as San Antonio or OKC. And I think that would be a real mistake if they run it back or just do like a marginal upgrade at some position. I think they need ideally a new starting center, replacing DA, a new fifth starter, moving Marcus into a bench role where he can be in a smaller role only because of his health and his playing style. And then I think they could use a couple of two-way wing / guards off the bench. And then the back end of the roster, some young talent that either has really high upside, like an Adu Thero, or is more ready to win now, which could be that 2026 first round pick. But I don't like in the aftermath of all this, I haven't really had, just checking my texts. I don't have great clarity right now on this yet, but that will certainly be something to monitor as the rest of the season progresses. David, thank you for the super chat. Goes back to poor roster construction. Playable guys are hurt or exhausted by the end of the season due to high minutes in regular season every year. That's a great point, and I don't disagree with you. I think JJ has to be more trusting with the rotation, and it's also like Vando, for example. I know Vando hasn't been playing his best basketball recently, and there's been some stuff with the lineup data that you could point to where it is justifiable to not be playing him or to not be playing him much. But Vando has had stretches of the season where he's been really important and really impactful. And I think JJ should be trying to uncover that and re-spark that in Vando rather than just being like, I don't trust the guy, I'm moving on. And I think that's a part of his coaching journey that he can learn from and be better with. And he's almost kind of forced into that now because the alternative is just play 8 guys and don't play Vando. And I don't think Bronny is going to be in the playoff rotation. I know they've been playing him little shifts here or there. I don't think he's going to be in the playoff rotation. So they could either go with 8 guys or they could go with 9 guys. Maybe they just go with 8. That seems to be more of the JJ playbook, but I think it's a combination of JJ's coaching style plus the roster. Now, I think in JJ's defense, if he had OKC's roster, he would be playing 10, 11, 12 guys, and especially on the nights when it's a blowout and like balancing it better. So I do think it's more of a roster construction issue than anything. But I also think JJ has a very short leash with like half of the roster, and that has also led to Luka, Austin, etc. playing too many minutes. Sarah Talks Ball, thank you for the super chat. Now that Austin and Braun are banged up too, should we rest them for the majority of the remainder of the regular season and try to get healthy? Yes, I would say if there's any risk of further injury or further setback, I would just rest anybody who is dealing with anything and just make sure they're healthy and in bubble wrap going into round 1. If the guys can play and it's just pretty much like playing through something or it's not really aggravated right now, then I would say play through it. But I understand. I mean, this kind of goes back to the earlier conversation about do you tank for the 6 seed? I'm still of the belief, and I think the Lakers will be of the belief that you just go for it and let the chips fall where they may, and you have to be smart with it. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if now Marcus maybe misses the Sunday game just out of being conservative and resting him for that OKC game. But I think it really just depends on like how those guys are feeling and how, like, we don't know how is Austin's back today. We're not going to get an injury report until tomorrow. So maybe Austin is questionable, or maybe Austin is out. And if that's the case, then I think the Dallas game becomes losable. But I would agree with the general sentiment that if guys are banged up, this is not the time to further risk it. And you're going to need everybody. So I think now that you have the Luka reality, you need to preserve everybody's health down the stretch here. And like that almost becomes more important than your seeding, just because if you're limping to the finish line and you go like 4-1 and you earn the 3 seed, but then Austin is hampered. If Austin's hampered, you have no shot in round 1. They need the best version of Austin or close to it to have any shot. Same thing with LeBron. So I would agree with like those two in particular. Marcus, I think those 3 guys are the 3 that they really have to protect, because those are now their 3 best and most important players and or available players, and they need to make sure those guys are in a good good spot. Michael D, thank you for the super chat. Wow, season potentially over. LeBron coming back if he feels he didn't get a real shot with Luka. Second season, Luka didn't really have a legit shot with Lakers. JJ got to figure out a new rotation. Absolute shitstorm. For the LeBron part of this, I have shifted toward LeBron coming back still being the most likely, or now again being the most likely outcome. I had that as my most likely outcome for most of the season. Then I would say the last couple of months it had shifted a bit. Then I think the buzz that's been out there is more likely that LeBron is going to be coming back, but I still think there's some percentage of him potentially retiring. I don't want to get into the Memphis stuff unless you guys want to get into it, but I also thought part of it, hearing LeBron talk about going to Memphis and like not wanting to stay in the Hyatt, and I know it was more of a commentary on Memphis, but there also to me was an element of like, this dude's done this for 23 years and he just the end is near. I don't know if the end is now or if the end is next season or the end is 2 seasons from now, but the end is near. And like hearing him even talk about it in that way, I don't know if I'm sure you'd get the sentiment from LeBron that he doesn't love Memphis a few years ago, but there also was an element of like, I'm tired here, and or at least that was my interpretation of it. And we've had several of those comments from LeBron throughout the course of the season that he just has seemed more tired in general with playing than he was at any point in the past, which does make sense. 41, year 23. But LeBron has consistently said over the last few years when talking about retirement that it's not the physical part. LeBron could play till he's 45. LeBron could even play maybe even to his late 40s. For him, he said it's always the mental part of, do I want to get up at 5 a.m.? Do I want to go in the cryo chamber? Do I want to go get shots up, weight lift, get shots up later in the day again? Like, do I want to put myself through that mental grind when I've proven everything I need to prove? I've played a million years. I have every record. Depending on how you feel about him, he's the best or second best player of all time. Like, it just, he's done everything. He has nothing left to prove. And the only thing keeping him going is the competitiveness and the pursuit of the 5th title, continuing to break records and continuing to also improve his records and make greater distance between him and everybody else. So I think he's going to still, like, LA still remains the most likely. There's an element here of, do the Lakers want him back? I know that was reported by ESPN, but like, I think 2 things can be true where you can say, oh yeah, we want LeBron back, but there was no monetary amount attached to that. And that's what I think is going to be interesting with the negotiation between the 2 sides is like, you can say we want LeBron back, but the subtext to that could also be, but we're only going to pay him the minimum, or we're only going to pay him 10 million or less. And you could then claim plausible deniability of, hey, we wanted LeBron back, but you're not really saying, but it was at this cost. And then LeBron's like, well, I think I should be making 15, 20, 25 million. So I think there's going to be some sort of negotiation there between the 2 sides. And it's going to be interesting to see where they ultimately settle and if they can find a common ground there. But I would still say LeBron will be back. And if anything, with the way Luka closed the season, with the way that the Lakers closed the season up until this point, I think that would give LeBron optimism as to their title odds next year, assuming they can make the right moves in the offseason. It does suck that this is the second time Luka will not have a legit shot with the Lakers. I mean, I think last year was closer to a legit shot. It was obviously, he gets traded right before the deadline, so it's just like a mad dash to the playoffs. and then he does get the illness or whatever in game 3, and like the Lakers just ultimately fizzle out in round 1. But it is unfortunate. And then JJ, I would agree, needs to be better with the rotation in general. And yeah, just not great right now. Alma, thank you for the super chat. Always the risk when you have arguably the worst depth in the league. You're always one Luka injury away from catastrophe. Look at Detroit without Cade, San Antonio without Wemby. We're not in the same stratosphere. Even Denver, who like the lineup data on the season has been bad without Jokic, but Denver found ways to gut out wins without Jokic when he was out. OKC has been able to gut it out without Shea. Yeah, I agree. I think the Lakers' depth is just not comparable to the other top teams in the league, and that's something that they got to figure out. And then Alma follows up again. Anyone else to win the chip other than OKC? Their fans are insufferable. I think San Antonio, Boston, and Denver are the only 3 teams I could see winning the chip outside of OKC. And I mean, San Antonio, I think it's self-explanatory. They're going to win 60 games, second best team in the NBA. They have right now the number 2 MVP favorite in Wemby, best defensive player in the world by a wide margin. Boston, I think, is the favorite in the East, should be the favorite in the East. They have the best 2-man combination of like Tatum continues to look better, and with the level that Jaylen Brown's been at, give me those 2 over Cade and Duran. Give me those 2 over Brunson and Cat. Give me those 2 over Mitchell and Harden. I don't think it's particularly close. Like it used to be, Tatum was the top 10 guy. Brown was like a borderline top 20 or maybe top 25 guy who obviously rose in the 2024 playoffs to win Eastern Conference player of the playoffs, and then Finals MVP. Now it's like I don't think Tatum's currently at top 10 level, but I think Brown is at a top 10-ish level. And then Tatum, if he could get back to being top 30, top 25 type player, that's a pretty dangerous combo there. And then Denver, I still think with Jokic and Murray, I mean, we just got the news that Peyton Watson is going to be week to week moving forward. So that's a blow for them. But I think they match up well with OKC, and I think they can potentially beat OKC in round 2. Although now, if they jump the Lakers for 3, now they're on the San Antonio side, and maybe they're able to beat San Antonio and make it to the conference finals. So we'll see with that. But I would put it in that order for me: San Antonio, Boston, then Denver. I would put OKC first, of course. The more we know, thank you for the super chat. This is the time we need our second option to rise up, but it's Austin that has a lot of limitations. He'll play good versus the Mavs and fall off again. We'll see. I don't know what to expect from Austin. I think if it is Minnesota, I do expect a good series. If it's Houston, and the problem with Houston is he's going to get the Amen Thompson treatment for 7 games, and that's just like, if you're building an Austin defender out of a lab, Amen Thompson would be pretty much the prototype. So that'll be a tough defensive matchup, or defensive matchup for him to attack. But yeah, we'll see. Like this is the time for Austin to prove himself and to make his money. That's all I can really say about that. Pleasers, thank you for the super chat. Season ended last night. Regardless, just remember this team overperformed in spite of Rob, not because of him. Rockets and Wolves are so happy. I think I would agree in general that there was some level of overperforming, at least during that stretch. But I had the Lakers winning 52 games and being the 4 seed. They might actually end up winning 52 games and being the 4 seed. If they go 2-3 the rest of the way, they will win 52 games and likely be the 4 seed. So my prediction still potentially stands. And there's a chance Minnesota, like my prediction was beat Minnesota in round 1 and lose to OKC in round 2. Beating Minnesota in round 1 might not happen now. Probably won't happen now. But I agree with like the success being in spite of Rob and not because of him. I think he deserves credit for Marcus Smart, DeAndre Ayton, and Jake LaRavia. But the way I've analogized this has been, let's say you're going out to eat, right? And you have let's just say you have upwards of $100 to spend on a night out, but you are being financially prudent and you're like, I'm going to spend $20 tonight and like I could technically spend 100, but I budgeted I'm going to spend only 20. And like that's kind of like the bare minimum. You're going out with your significant other, like that's like the absolute kind of bare, like it's harder to spend under like $20 if you're going to go eat somewhere, right? You could go out and find like a couple slices of pizza or a burger or like something that is going to be under that $20 threshold, and it could be a great meal. It could be incredibly delicious. And I think that's what the Lakers did. I think they said, we have $100 to spend. We're only going to spend 20. And they spent the 20 on DA and Marcus and Jake. And for the value, it was great. They got the bang for their buck. But they could have spent the additional 80, or they could have spent to 40, or they could have spent to 60, and they just didn't do it. And so it's like, that's where I've had a little bit of a problem with some of the analysis with the offseason, because some people have been like, oh, well, look at what DA did and Marcus and Jake. And it's like, yeah, but the Lakers, they put self-imposed restrictions of we're only spending $20, and they got the pizza and maybe an ice cream or whatever, and it was delicious. But it wasn't like the best possible meal they could have had on their night out, going out, whatever. And that's my point, is like they could have done more. They did not. Like I think there's been this narrative that they maximized their offseason, and it's just not true. They could have traded the first round pick. They could have done more with some of they could have tried to get off Vando. They could have tried to maximize Dalton's value while he still had like a sliver of value, instead of just letting that asset rot. And now it's a clear negative value where he's struggling in the G League. They just mismanaged several things in the offseason. So sure, if I say I'm only going to spend the $20, like they did a great job within that constraint, but they could have done more than the $20, and they chose not to. And now that it's on them to fix it in this summer, and like we'll see if they're able to do that. But yeah, Rockets and Wolves are happy. Michael D, thank you for the super chat. Will you be covering rest of the playoffs once LA is out? Yes, I'm going to be doing more beyond the block coverage and going live. Definitely want to be going live after like every finals game. Want to do a lot of the conference finals and some of the second round. So we'll see if the Lakers are in the second round. TBD. But yeah, once the Lakers are out, I will be doing additional coverage. Logan, thank you for the super chat. Is it possible to throw Luke out there for a minute or two the last game of the season so he can qualify for awards? So I'm glad you asked this, because I actually did not touch on this earlier. So no, the short answer is no. I think they are going to apply for this grievance, and they're going to get it. But there's a threshold of for the 65 games, you need to play at least 20 minutes in 63 of them. You are allowed 2 exceptions where you play at least 15, somewhere between 15 minutes and 20 minutes. Luka has actually had 2 exceptions where he has had 2 games where he left early and he was between 15 and 20 minutes. So he would qualify from that perspective, but he does not hit the 60. Like at that point, it's 62 games of 20 plus minutes and 2 games of, I think one game was like 16 minutes, one game was 19 minutes. So Luka would still not qualify because, well, Luka would have to play 20 minutes is my point. Luka cannot just go in for a minute or 2 and get the 65th game. He'd have to play 20 minutes to qualify for the 65th game. So at that point, like that's just not, Luka cannot, with this injury, Luka cannot go out there and play 20 minutes in the next 9 days. That's unheard of for this type of injury. Like it's a minimum 3 weeks. So it's not happening. Elijah, thank you for the super chat. Silver lining, we'll see if AR can rise in the offs. Yeah, I've been touching on that throughout the show. I think that is one of the potential silver linings here. I would have ideally liked to see that next to Luka, so we have a better sense of how Luka and Austin fit together. But this is a huge opportunity for Austin to silence a lot of the doubters and prove that he's not necessarily going to be a number 1 moving forward, right? Or he will not be a number 1 moving forward, but maybe he could be a number 2 who can step up. And like, to Austin's credit, when he's had these situations where LeBron's been out or Luka's been out and he steps up as either the number 1 or the number 2, he has often performed well. But this will be the ultimate test of doing it in the playoffs against a really good defense. Rich, thank you for the super chat. I appreciate your podcast, bro. My favorite mainstream media is trash, filled with East Coast Laker hater personalities. Long term, I hope Luka can take the hit or take the hate of being a Laker. I appreciate that, really do. My goal is to combat the East Coast bias and East Coast narratives, and bring a more fair and balanced approach to coverage. I'm not perfect, but I try and strive to refine my analysis and takes and perspective and get better with that. So I'm also not above criticism or constructive criticism or feedback or whatnot. So I think Luka can take the hate of being a Laker. I mean, this was a dude who was playing professionally in his teenage years at the highest level and dominating. And I mean, he was dealing with hate in Dallas as well. So I'm not worried about that from Luka. I do agree that it's a different level with the Lakers. It's a different fever pitch. It's a different spotlight and scrutiny. And it's just turn on any national podcast or any national show. There's always a Lakers segment. It's like built into every single show. Are the Lakers contenders? Are they pretenders? Is Luka MVP? Is LeBron the number 3 or the number 2, or is Austin worth the contract? It's every single show. It's every single show. It's built into everything. So, it's at a different level than in Dallas, but I think he's going to be fine. Jerry Soriano, thank you for the super chat. As my light dies behind me, the Lakers are ruined investing in Luka and Reeves. I respectfully disagree, but we'll get a better sense of where Austin's at. And then if he's not ready, you sign him and you potentially sign and trade him, or you sign him and you flip him next season. But Luka will be around for the long haul. Tony Lee, should the Lakers go get Cam Thomas? With when Cam Thomas, well, first of all, I don't know how closely you follow the show, Tony, but you were talking to a guy who's not a big almost reversed his name, Cam Thomas guy. I'm not a big believer in him and just like that general archetype of volume, inefficient scorer who doesn't play defense, but views himself as like an all-star level guy. That's just not really my preferred role player archetype, which I think he's clearly a role player. However, even if he had interest in going to the Lakers or the Lakers had interest in him, because of when he was released by Milwaukee, he is not playoff eligible. He was released after March 1st. So they could sign him for the next few days or few games, but he wouldn't be able to play in the playoffs. So I don't see that happening. Plus the Lakers have 15 players under contract. So they'd either have to waive Kobe Buffkin or Maxi Kleba. I don't see them waiving Maxi. He's provided some good minutes for them, but he also has a great relationship with Luka and JJ. And Kobe Buffkin was the Lakers rarely like to admit that they made a mistake with a player. So it would go against everything with how they've operated to say that they screwed up with Kobe Buffkin and release him. So I don't see that happening. Ruben, thank you for the super chat. Even if we miraculously win round 1, don't bring Luka back. Halliburton had this right before his Achilles. Man, this is so tough. Sports are brutal. That's a good point. Like we might just not see Luka back. I mean, they did not give a timetable. They said indefinitely, and indefinitely means indefinitely. Like he could just be done for the season. We don't really know. Like in theory, if it's on the longer side of like 6 weeks or even 7 weeks, yeah, I mean that's like conference finals ish. But if they somehow survive round 1, they are not beating San Antonio or OKC in round 2. I'm very, very confident in that. And yeah, it's just a really tough break. But you got to be careful with Luka and make sure it doesn't become an Achilles thing. I am going to try to go through these as quickly as I can with all these super chats because I do have got a handyman coming over to fix some things around the house. So that you should be here in the next 5 to 10 minutes. Chavo, thank you for the super chat. Season most likely over. Another year of Luka's prime with no deep postseason run. Pelinka better do his job and build a proper contending roster. We are wasting this generational player's prime years. Agree with everything you're saying. I've been on the side of Luka's 27. So yes, you do have a runway with him. You do have a future with him. but you also have a present with him. And it's not just about, can we build the right roster in 2028 or 2029? It's, this dude just led a team to the finals a couple years ago. Give him the tools to do so, and I think he could do so. So the pressure's on Rob in the front office. Jay Spares, thank you for the super chat. Trying not to be petty here, but Rob and JJ need to take blame here. JJ played these guys into the ground, and because Rob can't build a team, you got your gap year at the expense of Luka's health, Rob. I agree that there is blame on both of their parts. With JJ, I blame more the extended stretch of the rotation and playing time. With Rob, I deem it, to your point, like more on the roster and the lack of depth. Look, I also think there's just an element of like freak incidents happen, and that's ultimately what this was. But I also don't want to ignore some of the warning signs we had along the way with just the depth of this group and JJ feeling like he had to play guys a certain amount of time. So I think both things are true there. Rip Van Winkle, thank you for the super chat. 77 made this gap year interesting. Rob punted. I hope he gets fired. 2 straight years of Luka era with no postseason run or All NBA whimper of an ending. Luka said, screw your gap year. I'm going to make this team a contender or at least a fringe pseudo contender. I don't see Rob getting fired, but I think there's a lot of pressure on him this summer to build a more of a contender and actually go for it more than he did this past summer and trade deadline. Gary Singh, thank you for the super chat. JJ, the new Tibbs, Luka hamstring was bothering him in first half, down 30 at half to OKC. Why even putting him back in? I would rest AR versus OKC on Tuesday. I talked about this last night on my show. We talked about it earlier on Lakers Collective. I think it's more on the training staff than JJ. JJ's talked about this all season with injuries. It's just he goes by what they tell him. So they cleared Luka. Luka has his people. I don't have clarity as to if they cleared him as well, but I would assume so, but don't know that for certain. I think this was an instance in which you should have held him out in the third quarter. If there's any injury at that point, you're down 31. What's the point? And I do see some similarities with JJ and Tibbs. I mentioned this last night. When you think about Tibbs and his average team, the hallmarks are overachieve in the regular season, squeeze the lemon, like all the juice out of the lemon in the regular season, overachieve seeding wise and record wise, and then run the players into the ground, and then they lose earlier than anticipated in the playoffs. That's been the Tibbs cycle continuously, and there's a little bit of that with JJ right now. Reeves, strongest soldier, thank you for the super chat. Rather just tank round one, rest of year than risk it. I hear you, and I understand that sentiment. I think you got a lot of competitive dudes who are fired up right now with how well they've been playing, and to pivot that dramatically, I just don't see the players being on board with that. I think they're going to go for it. But even if they go for it, even if they go for it, they still are massive underdogs in round one. Alma, thank you for the super chat. This roster is not good. When you have a player like Luka or Jokic, their individual brilliance can hide a lot of flaws. I'm concerned for AR's injury reemerging as well. I am a little bit concerned with Austin and his health status. He's had stretches recently where he's just not looked like the same player physically. I think the jump shot has been the most obvious thing, but even some of his burst and beating guys off the dribble, I've talked about this before, but I think that's been a general concern with Austin, is he does tend to wear down during the course of the regular season. And I agree that I think Luka, Austin, and LeBron have all papered over some of the flaws here. And when this group faces the highest, I think the Lakers can beat 25 maybe of the 29 teams in the league. I think, unfortunately for them, the 4 teams they maybe can't beat are the 4 best teams in the league seeding wise. And that ultimately puts a ceiling on your contender status. So something that they're going to have to address this summer. Jerry Soriano, thank you for the super chat. Luka and Reeves are choking versus OKC before injuries. They were not playing well. I thought Luka did not have a good half outside. Finished the game with, overall, I thought Luka had some good passing. He had 7 assists. Did have 6 turnovers, though. Technically, he had turnover on the play he got injured, so I don't count that one. We'll say 5 turnovers, but that's still too many. Not even midway through the third quarter, too many for Luka. Austin had 4 turnovers in the first 3 minutes of the game. just disaster start. Might have been his worst 3 minutes of the season. I thought he bounced back throughout the course of the first half. He was the leading scorer in the first half, was the leading scorer for the game. But I would say on balance, he did not have a good game. He played better, but he did not have a good game. I don't think anyone had a good game, quite frankly, last night. I think LeBron was probably the closest. Only Pools, thank you for the super chat. They retracted games Luka missed for kid's birth. Not yet, but they're going to appeal it and it will go to arbitration. And I think it will happen. Savage, thank you for the super chat. So hypothetically, if AR Braun get us out the first round and deep into the second round, what's the talk looking like then? Trying to be positive because, geez, I think it's possible. I think it's more possible against Houston than Minnesota. I have a hard time seeing them beating a healthy or healthy-ish Minnesota team without Luka. I think there's a puncher's chance against Houston. I mean, I would say it would take Austin and LeBron both playing at all NBA levels, which I think they both have for short stretches of the season. They have not had sustained stretches of all NBA play. It's been more I think Austin had a few weeks there. LeBron maybe had a couple weeks there, maybe a few if you want to argue for that. But it's been a month at most for each of them. And Luka was also a part of that and a part of the success in both instances. So it is little concerning there that they won't be having him. And I just, a little is underselling it. It's very concerning that they're not going to, but I want to give you some positivity here. I mean, the talk will be that they overachieved and Austin, JJ, LeBron will all get a lot of credit and deservedly so. But I think the deep into the second is where I will drive off the freeway of logic here because I do not see any world in which they have a competitive series with San Antonio or OKC without Luka. Manon now, thank you for the super chat. Going to be a bit of a doomer here, but I think people are about to see how bad this roster is without Luka. I think they are barely a play-in team. We'll see. Technically 7-6 without Luka on the season, but and several of those, I would say a couple of those they punted just outright, no Austin, no LeBron. So I'm trying to give you the glass half full perspective here, but I agree. I mean, I said I would pick Wolves for those who missed it. I said without Luka, I'm picking Wolves in 5 over the Lakers and Rockets in 6 as things stand. So I think the Lakers lose in both instances. And against Minnesota, it's not really close. Against Houston, it's kind of close, but not really. And then Manon now asks or follows up, if Luka isn't available in the first round, I think the Lakers get swept or maybe win one. That's possible. I would have a hard time seeing them getting swept by Houston. I think they get at least a game on Houston, but I think it's within the realm of possibility that Minnesota sweeps them with how Minnesota dominated them last postseason with Luka. It was a different version of Luka, not as good of a version of Luka, but take even that version of Luka away, and I think Lakers get swept last postseason. Theo, thank you for the super chat. Can we talk about how susceptible Luka and AR are to small nagging injuries due to size and athleticism disadvantage? Main concern with Austin as number 2. Yeah, I mean, I think Luka has largely played through that. I'm looking at his career. I think both guys are generally banged up and playing through something, which is concerning in and of itself. But also, if you look at Luka has now only had 2 seasons in which he's played 70 or more games. Technically, the bubble season and the following season were both shortened. So maybe you put those 2 seasons aside, but rookie year played 72 games. And then let's start post COVID 2021, 22, 65, 2022, 23, 66, 2023, 24, 70, last year, 50, this year, now 64. Technically he missed a couple due to the birth of his daughter. So even if we just give him those games back he would have played, if not for those circumstances, that's still 66 games for Luka. And then, 67 maybe with the suspension, but he did get suspended and we have to factor that in. So yeah, I mean, I guess there's a general, if you're looking at Luka's career, he's often going to miss somewhere between 14 to 17 games. With Austin, he came in right after, he came in during that 2021-22 season. So he's only played in 82 game seasons, but Austin himself, 61 games, 64, 82, 73, 51, maybe he gets to 56. Austin also has 3 seasons under 70. So yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a concern, especially with those two together. And I think it's more of a concern for me, honestly, with Austin, because I think Austin has kind of ran out of gas in each of the last few seasons later in the season. And you see his jumper starts to go and his overall offensive impact starts to go. I do think he's been better in the playoffs than people have given him credit for, but still, I think that's like the final challenge for him. Aside from playing at a certain level against a certain caliber of defense, it's also like, can his body physically hold up through the rigors of an 82-game season plus a deep playoff run? And then final few here, Connor Phillips, thank you for the super chat. How'd things be if the Mark Williams trade went through? That's a fun question. So last year they would have had Mark Williams. I think they have a more competitive showing against Minnesota. I think he's better than Jackson and would have given them 2 centers against Minnesota. So I don't think he swings the Minnesota series, but let's just say they lose in 6 rather than 5. This season, I've loosely followed Mark Williams' season. I'm not gonna like lie and say I've been tracking him every single game. So he's played 57 games, which is fewer than DA. So that's something that, because in this scenario, I'm going to assume DA is not on the roster. DA's played 67 games. DA's averaging 12 and 8, just under a block, 67% shooting, and 67% on twos, 63% at the line. Mark Williams is averaging 12 points, 8 rebounds. So they're basically tied there, just under a block, both averaging 0.9, 64% shooting for Williams and 77% on free throws. But I would also argue DA is playing with far better playmakers and passers than Mark Williams is. Then looking at some of the advanced metrics, like 67% true shooting, so I would say quickly looking at both guys, Mark Williams clears him in advanced metrics. And I also think he's playing in a worse offensive ecosystem. So, I mean, I think Mark Williams is better than DA. I think it's like close, but I think Mark Williams is overall, I think he's a better rim protector. I think he could be I think he's a better lob threat and finisher around the basket. DA's got the better touch, and he's got the floater runner range and like the little short roll jumper. But I'd rather have Mark Williams between the two, even with the medical concerns. So I would say the Lakers, like, they lose 10 games based on how many games Mark Williams has missed compared to DA. But I think he's got a higher floor than DA and does not completely let go of the rope in the same way that DA does. So I don't know it'd be more Jackson, more Maxey in like the games they missed. So they're probably similar record wise, but I think they have a higher ceiling with Mark Williams. And he's someone that I just trust a little bit more than DA. LAL Prime, thank you for the super chat. Do you think LeBron can be the first option in the playoffs, or do you hope AR can fill the void? I think it's slightly matchup dependent. I think my answer to this question is both. I think it's probably going to be more of a 1A, 1B situation, and it really is like who's playing better, who has more of the matchup advantage. I talked about it earlier in the show, but I think Austin has more of a matchup advantage against Minnesota, and LeBron has more of a matchup advantage against Houston because Austin has cooked their perimeter guys, and especially when they're in drop, we'll see they probably switch more against the Lakers and dare them to beat them off the dribble. But Austin's played really well against Minnesota. He hasn't played as well, certainly not played as well against Houston. LeBron, I just think has less of physical advantages against. It's different, like attacking Julius Randle into Rudy Gobert as the rim protector and having Jaden, like that front line is just a monster front line compared to Houston's front line, where they do have similar size. I would still say Minnesota's a bit bigger with Gobert, but Şengün versus Gobert is like not even the same realm of defender. And then even Randall and McDaniels compared to Smith and Durant. McDaniels is by far the best defender of the four. And then Randall is, he's a bull. He's a beast out there. So, and we saw like that was a tough physical battle last postseason with LeBron versus Randall. And Randall got the better of him in some games and some stretches of games. Like Randall is one of the few guys one of the few non-centers who can physically match up with LeBron and like hold his own to some degree. So I would be more concerned with, or I'd be more like, I would rather lean into AR more in the Minnesota matchup and LeBron more in the Houston matchup, where Houston, LeBron's going to physically overwhelm Jabari Smith. He's going to physically overwhelm KD. I think he'll even physically overwhelm Tari Eason. And I just don't think they have a great matchup for LeBron in particular. They don't have someone to match up with like a 6'9", 250, 60-pound dude. They just don't. It's not like Şengün's too slow. So I would ideally like both of these things to come true in terms of like they're both neck and neck as a number one. They're both playing all NBA, all-star level basketball. But between the, like, I guess if I had to pick one of these, I'd almost rather pick the second one just because I think it's important for Austin to play at a certain level and prove he could do it. But I also think for LeBron, like based on his age, it's just unfair to ask him to be the number one option in a playoff series. Can he do it? I think so. I think he's a proven playoff player and he's a playoff riser, but I think it would be unfortunate if the way this all goes is like Luka's out, Austin isn't ready for the moment, and it all falls on LeBron's shoulders. I think that would be an unfortunate outcome in the playoffs. Arten, or Art and Kim, thank you for the super chat. Can they do an injury exception even for 2 weeks? I don't know for certain, but I'm pretty sure they can't. I think it's too late in the season, too small. I'm pretty sure, I think we had talked about this maybe last season for something or a couple seasons ago, and I looked into it, and I think the injury has to occur before a certain date. Like, let me look this up quickly. I'm pretty sure. So to apply for the NBA disabled player exception, you have to do so by January 15th of the season. And then you have until March 10th to use the exception to acquire a player. So yeah, we're way beyond that deadline. So yeah, I think it's Lakers can't do that. And then final one here from Oi Da Boy. Appreciate you. Thank you for the super chat. How many shots do I take tonight? This is tragic. Well, I'm no doctor, but I know they recommend not taking more, no more than 4 alcoholic beverages. I think that's a little low depending on your drinking abilities but I would say, let's say 2 shots. Take 2 shots. I cannot recommend any more than that. I do not want to be liable for this, but we'll say take 2 shots tonight. If you're feeling okay, maybe take a third one, but maybe stop there and listen to some Marvin's Room and watch a rom-com and, just have a carton of ice cream and you'll feel bad in the morning, but you'll hopefully have a restful Saturday and feel better by Sunday. We'll see. But yeah, I think it's a perfect ending because really, I was not hoping to do this stream, this show. Unfortunately, we are here. Luka is out for at least the next 3 weeks, but likely closer to 5 to 6 weeks, which potentially rules him out. Well, would rule him out for the first round, potentially even the second round, and just a devastating blow to the Lakers season. But crazier things have happened. You play the game in front of you, and we'll see how the Lakers can close out the regular season and then which matchup they get, which seed they are, and how they perform in round 1. And I will be covering it every step of the way. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. I now have to take care of some stuff around the house, but I will be back Sunday after Lakers Mavericks. Shout out to the chat. Shout out to the Late Night Gang. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back in a couple days. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Drink responsibly. Don't do anything crazy. Don't crash out. But feel the feels. It's okay. But enjoy your weekend. Talk to you guys soon.